Would Marie Noonan please come forward? Or as I like to say, you may approach. One pink. Open the session of March 18th, 2025 for Children and Family Law. And would our seat Philip please introduce herself? Because we're family here. After you've turned your mic on. You're welcome. I know in Parks
I'm in
and
a new
Recreation.
space. I've forgotten what.
Yeah, I know.
I'm going to tell my chair you're dismissing our committee. I'm Allison Knapp. I'm from Stratham, Rockingham 12 over on the Seacoast. Thanks for having me.
And you serve on Parks and Recreation, right?
I serve on Resources, Recreation, and Development, yes.
That's what they call it, huh? Okay, well, welcome. And Representative Gray, would you give us an update on Oscar?
I would be happy to. So I talked to Representative Grossman last night, and while it's still a very slow progress, Oscar is starting to get interactive, and all his limbs are moving and stuff. So we're one miracle down, so we're waiting on a bunch of others. So they're just waiting on a bed to move him over to rehab. He's on a regular floor right now, but there is progress. So anyway, she says she can feel the prayers. Please keep them coming. And she thanks everybody for their concern.
I'd like to call on our vice chair to do that, offer a prayer for him. Would you do that? You did such a good job last time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to take a moment of silence and prayer. Please, dear God, keep your watchful eyes and healing hands on Oscar and his family to bring them through this crisis. Please continue to give Oscar and his family the strength to fight hard to bring him back to where he can be. I thank you and I pray to you in the name of Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Open the hearing on House Bill 518, requiring the Commissioner of DHHS to provide a detailed annual report of all costs incurred by the DCYF, and the bill's sponsor, Representative Erica Leon. Come on up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. For the record, I am Representative Erica Leon, and I represent Rockingham 13, which is the town of Derry, along with a couple committee members here. This bill actually has a couple different benefits to it. I had initially looked to file a bill to make DCYF a separate division, consistent with some of the comments from candidates for governor and a bill that had happened last year that was heard in this committee. When I reviewed the hearing from the bill to make DCYF a separate committee, a separate department last year, there were two main issues. The first was DCYF is highly supervised and highly advised. They report to quite a few different groups. So there is a significant amount of oversight, perhaps overlapping oversight. But I do have to say that is a separate issue from the bill that is in front of you. The other question was that we heard that there was some sharing of resources within the division and others within the Department of Health and Human Services. That's an issue with trying to look at DCYF as a standalone division, but it's also an issue for making making sure that they have the resources that they need in order to fulfill their mission. Right now, if we were to look at the reports that are available and look at some of the time that's available, I reached out to the LBA to find the information that I could. It's not entirely clear exactly how much time is spent on DCYF efforts versus other efforts, how much shared resources, materials there are. So I know that when I substituted on finance last year, I heard some bills that came out of this committee that talked about adding more resources, adding more staff to DCYF. And finance didn't have the clarity to know exactly what was truly necessary based on the existing staffing levels. So this bill, which would have the commissioner provide a detailed annual report of all the costs, and I'll let you read through all those details, would be beneficial both for those who are looking to add more resources to the division while it's inside Department of Health and Human Services. It also would provide clarity for any future discussions about the necessity to elevate to DCYF to be its own department to make sure that it is able to execute on all of its important goals. So this is a bill of transparency and one that'll help understanding among the legislature. I think that it should be quite straightforward, and I'm hopeful that that's why this was scheduled just before the deadline, because it is a pretty clear-cut bill about making sure that everybody understands what is spent and what resources are used in DCYF. Additionally, I would say that the department may want to have a different date of the reporting. If that's the case, I would be happy to see about drafting an amendment now for you to deal with today, or to support that as it moves over to the other body and to talk with them about what date would be the appropriate reporting date, because they already do provide a lot of this information in different areas. This would consolidate this information, and there's no reason to make the work more difficult by choosing a different reporting date than what currently exists. So in conclusion, I'd ask for your support on this bill. If we can make any small changes today with me going to OLS and requesting an amendment for you to clarify that now, because I expect you'll be acting on this bill today, I would be happy to do that. And if not, and there's a prevailing idea to move over to the other body of when to change the reporting time frame, I would be happy to bring that to them as it moves forward. So with that, I'll take any questions.
Representative Petrino.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Representative, for taking my question. I'd like to know, are we going to be doing this type of audit for all of our state agencies and departments? Or are we just specifically looking at DCYF?
Thank you for the question. I think that if you're aware of some of the bills that we had to increase resources and make sure that we have appropriate supervision as we bring more children in state as opposed to residential placements out of state, we need to make sure that we have the resources we need and that they're being appropriately allocated. I would say that making sure that every dollar we allocate to making sure that children are safe is important and worthwhile. We can look at audits of other areas, but I think that our children are worth it, and it's important to get this information all in one place.
Follow up.
Thank you very much. Do you see this overlapping with the governor's efforts to take a look at all departments and see what areas we need to cut and streamline? So would this be duplicitous in any way?
Thank you for the question. The way that this is structured, it would continue on into the future. So this would provide important, potentially actionable information to both the legislature, the executive branch, and those within the department to make sure that we have appropriate resources and are allocating them in the most effective way. So while there is an effort right now in order to streamline the different departments, I think that this is a worthwhile long-term goal to make sure that we always ensure that DCYF remains both mission-focused and appropriately resourced.
Other questions? Representative McMahon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Ms. Leon.
Morning.
Representative Leon, excuse me. Specific to what this ultimately appears to me to be is an audit and a performance review on whether there's redundancy in the system. There's no fiscal note. Look, it alleges one's supposed to be coming, but is one going to come relative to this bill?
Thank you for the question. There's representatives of the department here as well. They stated that they'll be able to do this within their existing scope, and that this would not add an additional cost.
Okay, thank you, Representative.
Thank you.
The chair to Representative Nab, some chairs basically want the seat filler to keep quiet until it's time to vote. I run a very loose ship here, so if you're bringing wisdom from Parks and Recreation, from your life, from the town of Stratham, please feel free to contribute. We want you to be part of this. Welcome. Anyone else with a question for the bill's sponsor? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
And yes, the two bills that we are having hearings on today must be execed today, this one being one of them. Chair recognizes the Honorable Betty Gay from Salem.
Thank you very much. It makes me feel good to talk with y'all because I feel like I have a lot of friends here. So thank you, including Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
I have 3 points I hope to get across quickly. DCYF reports to over a dozen committees. It's very time consuming for them. So I would like to make the suggestion that they ask all the people they report to put together their criteria so they can create one report and everybody can receive that one report. We want them to have the work time to do their job rather than to report. My second point is we're all aware of the nightmares that have happened under DCYF care, and I'm sure every single person who works for DCYF is haunted by those children who fell through the cracks or crevices or massive failures that were probably a series of things that no one person could catch. So as a previous CQE, I was a certified quality engineer. One of the real basic tools is to create a flow chart of your procedures. So that way, somebody else, you don't have to use a whole lot of words to try to explain what each of us does. You put it on a chart, you put how much time it takes, you put how many people are doing that process, and how many children or families that you take care of on a regular basis. Usually that kind of chart will show you where you have a bottleneck or a shortage of people. It's expensive to take care of people who are housing insecure, are mentally unstable and not working. We're talking about a huge responsibility that DCYF tries to handle. So it's not a surprise that they run out of resources, do the best they can with a shortage, and face some really gut-wrenching situations that they really can't they try, but I'm sure they take home a lot of it. It's really a hard job, and it certainly doesn't pay well for what it costs them emotionally and in energy. So those are my suggestions, along with documenting costs. Let's document procedures so that we can see and show people where the needs are, and also show what we're trying to accomplish, what we're doing, and where we need help. Those are my 3 requests.
Thank you so much. Any questions for the former Representative Gay? Representative Seidel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just curious, do you support or oppose this particular piece of legislation?
I support this legislation. I'd just like to add that interpretation of looking at the budget as looking at the budget of time too, which, a flow chart would document.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes Marie Noonan, who is the director of DCYF. And you're not from New Jersey. The string is broken.
I am not. The string is broken. Good morning, Marie Noonan, DCYF Director, and I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone might have regarding this bill.
Question for me, it sounds like, I may be reading things into, but it sounds like there isn't a flow chart, there isn't a outline of what you folks do vis-a-vis DHHS?
So there are a number, hundreds of policies and standard operating procedures for DCYF, dependent on the role, the particular circumstance. So we have lots of guidance regarding the work that we do.
Do you see what the bill speaks to as work already being done or not being done or somewhere in the middle?
So we don't, I'm sure that our finance team probably has budgets and things like that, but we don't right now create one report specific to DCYF in this way. But we have identified there would be no fiscal note attached for us to be able to honor this bill.
I think you know that for 5 years now, I've chaired the DHHS Oversight Committee. And during that time, I've come to see how there's lots of overlap in the sense that somebody's really good at something and this person's advice is needed and nobody says, oh, I'm sorry, we can't take your advice, you're DCYF on that. I seem to recall that numbers of folks help broadly, so it might be very difficult actually to say exactly how much and how much time. That's just my
Yeah,
30,000-foot looking down
Yeah,
vantage
the
point.
DCYF employees are focused on DCYF, so there are there's certainly opportunity to collaborate with the department to move things forward for families. For example, we might have a caseworker talk with an eligibility person at the district office to make sure if the family needs assistance, that can they bring an application to a family? Can they help bring something back to the department in order for the eligibility person to process? So that's normal case management responsibilities where there's collaboration between the department, but our DCYF employees are focused on DCYF work.
Why I ask is the question was raised, should DCYF be moved off-site from DHHS? And many people testified it would break up some of the collaboration that happens far more easily because you are working together.
100%. The collaboration that I just mentioned ensures that we're meeting family needs. DCYF does not work in isolation with children, but we require that collaboration to ensure that family needs are met.
Okay, good. Thank you. Representative Love.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for taking my question. This report is going to include all funding also. And I know in education, when a school district takes federal money, there's often a lot of mandates attached to it. Is that the case here with DCYF? Or is there a lot of mandates attached to federal funding?
Yes, there are. There's certain reporting requirements, activities that need to be done in order to draw down those funds. Yes.
Would you follow up, please? Would you recommend maybe, or even think about having the mandates put into this report? The mandates that you're given. That way we'd understand it a whole lot better. Where this money's going, where it has to go, and things like that.
That would be a more complicated report, but I think we could certainly do that.
Representative Petrino.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for taking my question. With such a detailed accountability that's being asked, do you feel that you have the personnel to execute this, should this move forward?
So if I could clarify, sir, so the reporting, do we have the capacity to file this report?
Exactly. Do you have the
Yes.
capacity to file the report?
Yes, we believe that we do.
Thank you.
Representative Kozin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for being here to answer our questions. I am not as quick as my colleagues, so I missed, are you in favor of this or do you oppose it and why?
The department is not taking a position on the bill, but I'm happy to answer questions about the requirements or our ability to carry it out. Thank you.
Seeing nothing further, no further questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I have no more pink cards. Would you come to the mic, please? Because A, I don't hear well, and two, it's for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The department would prefer if it was December 31st instead of September 1st for the reporting deadline. I've already sent the request over to OLS, and I need to stop there next anyways. So I will run over there and pick that up so that this can be most easily streamlined with the process they already have.
Okay?
And I'd be willing to do that in the other body if you just want to adopt this as is and move forward as well. Either way is acceptable to me.
Okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
Then this closes the hearing on 518. I would like to open and not necessarily not leave it as open, depending on this possible amendment. I would like to open the exec session on 518 because we got to get it out the door, and I can't start the next hearing until 10:30 anyway. So, thoughts on 518 before I entertain a motion? Anybody's thoughts? Representative Love.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My thoughts are that that question I just asked about mandates might require an amendment in itself, which would add to what Representative Leon just spoke to.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Representative Cozen.
I don't think transparency is ever a bad thing.
You have anything from last night?
Wait till the amendment comes in and then
All right.
response,
Okay.
unless you want me to say something.
Yeah, I would say go ahead. Yeah, what you had shared earlier, I think would be germane right now.
I don't even remember what I said before, but
You don't remember what you said? Okay.
no, but I think that,
But we wouldn't know that, so make something up.
okay.
Okay.
There you go. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that requiring the Commissioner of the Department of Health and Human Services to provide a detailed annual report, it's already happening. I don't know that we need to exacerbate that. I think that transparency is important, but I think that the department should already be doing it, and we shouldn't need to be hiring more people to do a job that they should already be doing. I just don't see the relevance.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean that the bill should go away. I don't think that the bill should go away. I think it brings up a good subject matter for good discussion.
Representative Rice.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I have never had a problem getting information from the division. I think all we have to do is ask. I just don't think this needs to be legislated.
Representative Georges.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think so. As the former representative was said, do the work, then to show the report, because the report is not to really justify the work people doing. That's what I can say.
Thank you. Thank you. Representative Love.
Yeah, regarding what Representative DeSimone said, they should be doing it, and if they're not, I guess we have to tell them that they have to. Thank you.
I do know there was a short-lived special committee on DCYF. As the request for that special committee was first presented to DHHS oversight, the desire was to parallel the special committee on the Family Division of Circuit Court. And it was that latter committee, special committee, was a thorough review of things that family court did and didn't do in response to concerns and objections from the public. And I'm wondering if the bill before us here is one very small thing, but there might be either another attempt at a special committee on DCYF, or that a subcommittee could be carved out of Health and Human Services or Health and Human Services oversight to look not just at one item, but numbers of items. The Special Committee on Family Court, the Speaker decided not to bring it back as a special committee, but it is now a subcommittee of Children and Family Law, and we will have our first meeting next Tuesday and continue on for quite some time. So I'm wondering if what we need is something much larger than looking at one item. And what we found in our Special Committee on Family Court is when we were just discussing and saying, hey, wouldn't it be a good idea if it didn't need a bill? They wound up doing it. And I know particularly Representative Gregg had the incredible gift of just mentioning something, and 3 weeks later they were doing it. So I'm wondering if DHHS hasn't heard that maybe a little bit further reporting is a good idea, and we'll do it. And what we really need is a more thorough review of DCYF. That would be my 2 cents worth before it's demonetized. Anyone else? Thoughts? Well, we got a couple of ways we can go on this. We can wait for that amendment to come back, or I know you had a motion you would like to make, and I'm going to call for the vice chair to make a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to make a motion to retain this bill. I think that it deserves discussion. So that's my motion, is to retain.
Is your thinking that during the ensuing months, we would watch to see how the budget comes out? Because God knows what's going to be happening with positions all over the place, including DHHS and DCYF.
It absolutely is, Mr. Chairman. I would hate to see anything happen to a bill because of budget constraints. I would really rather retain it, see what happens with the budget, take the opportunity to discuss it further, see how it can be implemented without actually, as you said before, Mr. Chairman, having legislation, and we may be able to implement it by just meeting with DCYF, DHHS, or whomever and get it done. It may not need this legislation, but I don't want to kill this legislation in case we do need it. So that's my thought on it. I'm trying to take every aspect of the budget and the fact that this is the first year of it into consideration.
I'll second that.
Representative Petrino is a second. Any further discussion? I can loan out Representative Gregg because she's magic on this stuff. Yeah, good stuff. Let's broaden it. Let's see what the budget is. Any further discussions on the motion, which is to retain? Seeing none, the motion before us is to retain House Bill 518, moved by Representative DeSimone and seconded by Representative Petrino. And one of the clerks, call the roll.
The bill is HB 518. The motion is to retain. Chairman Pearson,
Yes.
Representative DeSimone,
Yes.
Representative Rice,
Yes.
Representative McMahon,
Yes.
Representative Nelson,
Yes.
Representative Seidel,
Yes.
Representative Love, Representative Corzine is yes. Representative Markel,
Yes.
Representative Petrino,
Yes.
Representative Nab,
Yes.
Representative Levesque,
Yes.
Representative Gregg,
Yes.
Representative Raymond, Representative Georges,
Yes.
Representative Malone,
Yes.
15 to 1.
15 to 1. And it does not go on the calendar. It is retained. And I think different ones of us can work with the prime sponsor to work on this over the next several months and see what the budget is. And maybe a subcommittee on DCYF oversight could be formed specifically like the attempt of last time. So thank you. It is 10:30. Oh, okay. Okay, good, thanks. This concludes the exec session on 518. And the vice chair is going to get a green sheet, which she needs to record some things. So we'll take about a 2 or 3 minute break and then move on to 775. Okay. Thank you. I was a radio talk show host, and at the top of the hour, I have a satellite feed. And in radio, a click is a third of a Going to open the hearing now on House Bill 775, and the chair recognizes the prime sponsor, Representative Jody Nelson, flown in at great expense from up front here, to present your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to my favorite committee in the House. I wanted to give just a couple minutes of background, and then I'd like to, with your permission, Mr. Chairman, turn it over to Dr. Scott Hampton, who is very involved in visitation centers, managing the last visitation center that we have open in Dover. He can give you a history of lots of funding over the years and so forth. So I just wanted to give you a little background in how I got involved in wanting to make this an important bill to me. This bill was submitted by Representative DeSimone and Representative Rice a few years ago, and I wanted to resurrect it. I had met Dr. Hampton a couple of years ago, where we both serve on the Commission on Domestic Violence, Sexual Assault, and Stalking, and I learned we had met a couple times, and I learned the importance of why we need these centers. And so, don't want to waste anybody's time here. I would like to have Dr. Hampton elaborate. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony, and you can come back. Mr. Hampton, would you please come forward?
Let's try that again. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Dr. Scott Hampton, and I've been working in the field of family violence for about 35 years, which I know just means that I'm old. And during that time, I've been specializing working with offenders, victims, doing supervised visitation services, working on fatality review teams and other projects. And this is one that I'm particularly passionate about. What I'm going to start with is I'm passing around my written testimony, so I'm not going to read that to you. You can do that in your own leisure. Some of the points I'm making are fleshed out in that. Plus, you'll see on the back page there are 2 pages of testimonials from custodial parents, non-custodial parents, and children who talk about the need for visitation, what it's like when we don't have it, and what it's like when we do have it. So quite simply, and I don't know the level of familiarity that each of you has with supervised visitation, but simply, I think we can all agree that children, New Hampshire's children, should have an opportunity to spend time with both their parents safely. Agreed? Right? That gets complicated when abuse has entered into the picture, when there's safety issues. And so at that point, we need to do something. And that something is what we call supervised visitation. It's something we've done in New Hampshire, just a little bit of history. We used to have up to about 7 centers across the state, covering most areas, not quite all areas. And for various reasons, a large part of that was lack of funding. The centers started to disappear one after another. Back in 2019, pre-COVID, New Hampshire recognized that we were sort of in dire straits with this, that we really needed to support these centers. So we had, I believe it was House Bill 565, was passed, and what it involved was giving funding to multiple centers across the state. It went through it went the whole way. It was part of the budget. It was all signed in, and then the last minute there was a need to cut back on funding for Health and Human Services, so it just disappeared. But it wasn't because people didn't believe in it. It was strictly a monetary thing. So what I just wanted to highlight, and then I'll answer any questions you have about the history or any other pieces of this, is I often come in and testify on contentious cases. There's this side, there's that side, and I make my pitch. This is not one of those. This is not one where there are these advocates who say, this is why protecting children and protecting vulnerable parents is a bad idea. No one's saying that, right? But there may be various priorities you have. Let's assume your thing is crime prevention. One of the things that we know is that the most dangerous time for in a domestic violence case isn't while they're in the home. That's dangerous. The most dangerous time is when the victim decides to flee, decides this is too dangerous. And it's the process of fleeing that's the most dangerous. So when we say, if it's that bad, just leave, she may know that's not a good idea, at least not until I have an adequate safety plan. I see a whole lot of head nods. You get this, right? So more than 50% of the homicides in New Hampshire are domestic violence related. So we know how dangerous that is, right? What if we could provide a protective bubble, right? Because at that time of leaving, what happens? That's when children start to be exchanged from one parent to the other. And if we could provide a safety bubble around that so that that exchange and the visitation, we're on duty, we're on guard, we're making sure nothing bad happens, there's a lot of crime that would be prevented. The abduction, the abuse, the homicides. Okay, that's part. Maybe your thing is child protection. We all know that children being exposed to domestic violence is not a path to a good life, right? The whole ACEs study that was done out in through CDC, looking at adverse childhood experiences on kids, talked about lifelong impacts. You know, the path towards drug abuse, the path towards criminality, the path towards suicide. All of these, we can protect the children and the vulnerable parents during this exchange time, so that kids will be safer. Maybe your thing, the most important thing is family preservation, right? Who doesn't think that that there's sanctity in New Hampshire families? So one of the things that offering supervised visitation, if we don't offer supervised visitation, we know those contacts are going to happen, right? But they're going to happen at a fast food restaurant. They're going to happen at the library. They're going to happen at the parking lot of the police department, which all that does is reduce the travel time for the officers to go to the crime scene. They're not watching, they're not supervising, but it's the illusion of safety. So these are going to happen with or without us. We need to step in and help with them. But here's something that you guys are policy folks, right? Eventually, this will walk down the line, I'm hoping, to the money folks. And we say, well, okay, what's this going to cost us? Well, it's not going to cost us a penny. And let me tell you why. The one case, just assume we have one case that goes bad because there's inadequate supervision. Well, we had a case back in 2015 with Child Protective Services. DCYF, or the state of New Hampshire, I'm sorry, the taxpayers of New Hampshire had to cough up $6.75 million. Now, I can run centers across the state for 3 years on that, right? That's just one case. That doesn't even take into account the cost of prosecuting homicide cases, prosecuting abduction cases or domestic violence or stalking cases. Those costs are invisible because you don't necessarily attach them to this. But if we can prevent those crimes, this is a huge savings. This is a huge investment for New Hampshire. Why are we coming for you today? We're at a critical juncture. You know how many centers we have left? How many directors are saying? You're looking at the guy who runs it. This is it, right? In Stratford County, and thank God for the commissioners of Stratford County that have decided, our federal funding ran out months ago. And they said, no, we can't drop this thing. This is too important. If the last one disappears, the concept disappears. Difference between 2 and 1 is nowhere near the difference between 1 and 0, right? And so we need to keep this thing alive. Now, what about effectiveness? I've run that center for 12 years. Hundreds of families, more than 1,000 families. No one has gotten hurt over that period of time. And it's anyone's guess to figure out how much could have happened had this been at Burger King or at the library. So they work. We know how to do it. What this bill spells out is that not only would it provide funding for the centers, but there'd be requirements that what these centers have to do is follow what are called the guiding principles. This was published through the National Council of Juvenile and Family Court Judges with a national steering committee that said we want to think real clearly about how to do this stuff that's in a safe way, which leads to the fact that we had 12 years of operation without a single incident. So it isn't just give us the money and we'll send it to people. They're going to have to prove to us that they can provide that safety net that we're requiring them to do. At that point, I will shut up and answer any questions you might have.
I have a question. I hope everybody's found the fiscal note. And one of the tricks on fiscal notes, when they say we can't give it to you right now, when we get the initial bill, is keep checking in on what the bill is, because on the 11th of February, the fiscal note appeared. I don't know why this isn't an early bill. We have crossover issues, but it's also a budget year. My attitude is let's go with this because it is a no-brainer, and fiscal things will have to work themselves through. Have you seen the fiscal note on this bill? You have. It seems to me, and I run a small family practice and counseling center in Kingston, and there's what I would like to have in my building and what I can afford to have in my building. The fiscal notes seem to be a bit high in terms of what it says we have to have each center. Am I right or wrong on that?
Yeah. I think where we are, and when we were funded through the feds, sort of the bare bones for us was about $150,000 to $200,000 a year for operation, and that was. I know how to pitch a penny, so there was a lot of cost savings that went into that. But one of the things that helps us a little bit is that we have national training and technical assistance partners. In fact, one of my jobs in the past has been to go around the country offering technical assistance to supervised visitation centers. And so we have national partners who will provide training free of cost to us for the centers. Anyone who either currently gets one of those federal grants or used to get one of those. So we qualify for that. So there are a number of things that I think can cut back a little bit on it.
My second question is the fiscal note looks at 10 supervised visitation centers. 10 is much better than 1, but so is 2 in a tight year. To what degree are you funded by DHHS, and to what degree are you funded by Stratford County?
Let's see, DHHS, that would be 0.
From DHHS.
Yeah, right.
You could double that.
Yeah. So what we had, we were entirely funded through the Office on Violence Against Women. We had what was called a Justice for Families grant. That was our entire funding. That disappeared. We had a 3-year grant, and I just finished year 5. This is how I save money, right? So I finished year 5 of that, and when that ended, that was it. That was our entire support, and the county just picked it up. Kind of said, okay, this is where we are right now until we get further support.
Representative Rice.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's good to see you. Thank you
here.
for taking my question. Sure. So, would this facility also would these facilities also have the ability, because we've talked a lot about domestic violence, but also for a parent that has perhaps been alienated from their child for a long while, to help get that to reunify? The same if someone came out of prison and needed a safe place so the child would feel safe to be able to reunify with that parent. Is that something that these would do?
Yes. So I think the short answer is that these are not mutually exclusive entities. So I have people at my center who have gotten released from prison, who have concerns around that lack of bond, that alienation you're talking about, who have substance use issues. So there are a number of overlapping issues. And one of our requirements when we were federally funded was that we had to have a vulnerable parent. That was Office on Violence Against Women. So that was the thing. Without that federal funding, we don't have this quite as tight the restrictions. So yes.
Representative DeSimone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for taking my question. So as far as the financial aspect of this is concerned, I think that, and I mean no disrespect, I think that we have zero concerns. since it's costing zero for your center to be open from the state, correct?
Right now,
Yeah.
for as long as they hold on to it in our one county, that leaves 9 counties with nada.
So I'll move on from the financial, if that's okay with you, and I may have a follow-up, please.
Follow up.
Thank you. I'd like you to talk just a little bit about, for the people listening and for the committee members that might not be understanding of what your center actually does, insofar as the physical, verbal, and mental health of the child,
Okay.
and how staff members interact with the families that come in there.
Great questions.
you-
Yeah,
thank
it's so important to know that. So there are a couple of layers that I think are important to know about the visitation centers, and part of it starts with the structural layout, because we're trying to provide safety on all levels, the physical, emotional, psychological. So one of the things about the centers, like our center, for instance, we have separate entrances and parking lots, so that, because we have cases where there's a restraining order, 2 parents can't have contact. Well, we make sure they can't have contact. So there's separate entrances, separate parking lots, separate waiting areas, 2 separate parts of the facility. When I selected the spot we have right now, I had them build an extra wall inside just to make sure you couldn't get there from here, that kind of thing. We have a sheriff, a deputy sheriff who's on duty at all times. Everyone who comes into the site is wanted. Their bags are checked. It's like a courthouse. It's like the airport, right? And that's custodial visiting parents, right? So even before the visit starts, there is this level of safety that we try and ensure, mostly the physical, but also the emotional and psychological. If they were exchanging the kids in the parking lot and one person's yelling at the other, and already we have problems. Once they're in the room, and we have what are called staggered arrival and departure times. So the parent who's caused harm comes first. They go into a room because we want to make sure they're not out there stalking the other person, right? Following them around. They come first. 15 minutes to a half hour later, the other parent with the child comes in, or children comes in. And then if this parent's late, we call the other parent, say, don't come. We don't know where the other parent is, and they're not here on time, whatever. So then they would come in with the child. We reverse the process at the end. Parent and child leave first, then the other parent 15, 20 minutes later, so they don't know where that parent went. That person leaves. Now, everyone who comes in goes to an orientation session separately, right? Non-custodial comes in, orientation. Visiting parent, children, orientation. Kids get to see what the center is like. We want to make sure they're comfortable. They have activities they'll be okay with. They get to meet the monitors so that that's not, stranger danger. We want them used to that. But we have, I think last time I checked, 61 different rules. You might think we're a little OCD, but that's okay. I can live with that, right? So we have all these different rules about what can happen during the session. So we do not ask we do not ask the child, where does mommy live? Is she dating anybody? So we're really careful about the conversations that happen inside. There's one goal of the center for these visits: safety for everybody. Right? So the whole focus is mom, dad, whoever the visiting parent is, you're here to spend time with your child. Have a meal together. We have a little kitchen. Talk about schoolwork. How's that going? How's soccer practice, right? Have conversations about the child's life, what the child's going on, and maintain that connection. I had a parent who came in he said, what's the use? An hour or 2 a week? What good's that going to do me? And then a few months later said, wait a minute. That hour or 2 has been so much more important, so much more valuable than the time I used to see him with 24/7, because I'm really focused on this. Stay really focused on that. But it's a great question. And if someone starts to stray and start asking the wrong thing, we redirect them. If they refuse to be redirected, visits go bye-bye, right? Or they get suspended. So everything is monitored. There's not a second that they're in the center from leaving their car to getting back in their car that isn't fully monitored. There's never a time when they're alone with their kids. So,
Thank you very, very much.
Sure.
Representative Love.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You might not have an answer for this, but do you know how many families are involved in this type of program in the state at any given time? Just a rough guess, I guess.
So I guess what I would say is for this kind of program in every county other than ours, it's kind of like zero. We just don't have them. The services aren't there now. And in ours, one of the challenges of visitation is very staff intensive. So we have the director, me, that's on. We have visitation monitors or chaperones, as they're referred to in the bill. We got the security officer, and because we're so focused on we can't have a person roaming from room to room to check in how things are going. So we only do at most 2 families at a time. But we have worked with hundreds, and I think in the last year, maybe we had 30 or 40 families we were dealing with. It's not a lot, but that's where we are.
Thank you. Thank you for the work you do.
Representative Rice.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you again for taking my question. Is it possible that some parents could lose full access or all access to their children due to the lack of these facilities?
Oh boy. I wish the answer were no. Right. So one of the things, and this is a head scratcher for me, one of the many scenarios that fits with your question is we have vulnerable parents, victim parents, who have stayed with the abuser to protect the child, right? If I leave, whatever, I don't know, I need to be there to guard my child kind of thing. So they stay in the relationship, and then we on the outside, me or Child Protective Services or whoever's looking, we look at, wow, you're not protecting your kid. You should have been out of there a long time ago. And so we put them in what's called this victim blame sandwich, meaning we're going to blame you for failing to protect your kids by staying too long. And then once you leave, if you don't offer the kid up for visits, we're going to accuse you of parental alienation. It's like, make up your mind. I don't know what I'm supposed to do here. But what's happened, and this is the head scratcher for me, is we have people who have stayed to try and protect their children, get blamed for failure to protect their children, and then the court removes the child from that parent for failure to protect and gives them to the person who is abusing the victim. I mean, it's like saying you didn't go into the house to pull your kid out of a fire, so we're going to take your kid and throw him in a furnace. I mean, it just makes no sense. Why would, So yes, this happens a lot. A lot of people losing custody because we don't have adequate ways of keeping people safe. And I'm hoping we can step up to the plate. Yeah.
Representative Malone.
So without
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for taking my question.
Absolutely.
First year she gets.
So without these centers, you refer back to police department exchanges for parents, Dunkin' Donuts, McDonald's. As someone who worked in homeless youth services and homeless services, I can tell you that those are not private spaces to have family time. Would you say that contributes to some of the ongoing trauma that these children have to face to have their parental, the custodial things in public, at a Dunkin' Donuts, at a police parking lot, in a McDonald's? It's not safe, but also, what does that do to the child that has to publicly show what's happening in their life?
Yeah, this is when they're at our center, everything's completely private. I mean, no one else knows they're there. This is private time. They're in a room. It's what we call an entirely catered event. Right? Parents don't, they say, well, I'm going to a parenting center. I'm saying, you're not really going to a parenting center. You're going to a visiting center. We're going to take care of everything for you so that, how many times at McDonald's do you go to the manager of the store and say, we'd like to do an orientation with our family here who's going to come visit? That would never happen. And the other thing is when we think there's the safety, I'm thinking of the case out in San Francisco where they had one of the church staff. It was at a church. They do a visitation, and the church staff was going to be the monitor. So, well, we got someone to monitor, make sure everything's safe. And so the father comes in and ends up shooting all 3 of his daughters and the monitor in the church. was like, well, it was monitored. Well, yeah, but there was no safety. It was the illusion of safety. So, yes.
Representative Martel.
For me?
Yeah.
Thank you for taking my my question. Dr. Hampton, I just want to say that first of all, I want to credit your the work that you do, and I can tell you, even though we've never met, from personal experience, I had as an attorney, I had a federal criminal client, and you turned his life around.
Oh, thank you for saying that.
So I strongly support what you're saying.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Representative Levesque.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for taking my question. I know this bill opens facilities all throughout the county. Would this also kind of expand in Dover to the Dover Visitation Center as well, to kind of open up for more families to be able to have those visitations versus having like 1 to 2 families being there?
It could, what it would do is it could expand our hours of operation. Well, it would do 2 things. One is it would guard against our closing. So I have my fingers crossed that the county will hold on to it, but I have no way of knowing that. It could expand the hours of operation so that even though the structure of our facility is such that we would be limited to those maybe 2 families at a time, we could increase the hours and days during the week so we could see more families.
Gozel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for being here to answer my question.
Sure.
Right now, is there any cost to the families that are involved?
0. And part of that is thinking, and you'll see one of the testimonials, someone said, $60 an hour if they get a private person, $60 an hour so I can spend time with my child. Just something seems wrong about that. We have to pay to spend time with your family. Yeah.
Representative Georges.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your presentation, and thank you for your work because you care about the family and children. I'm ready, but I know there is some work too people are doing in the state because myself, I know I have those kind of program.
I'm sorry, which program?
The program working with for the domestic violence and the family, and I have even a nice curriculum what I did like a peace begin at home, because just to make how parents and the children supposed to be and how to help them, even they are in the center or in problem. But I just thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you very much for saying that.
Yeah.
One piece of unsolicited advice. I believe you for a lot of reasons, including 50 years of day jobs, when you say this saves money. It does, overall. But there are those who have to have it proven.
I know.
When I very much helped get Medicaid dental through the House of Representatives, all I needed was 10 fellow Republicans to vote with me. I got 94. And the reason I did is I didn't just say this will save money. I showed them how. And your statement that this will be cost effective, I not only do I believe you, but I know why. My suggestion would be to you and to anybody is give me some stories, give me some stats, give me a state that started this is now saying it saved X in a child being deprived of this parental visitation, got progressively more angry and went on a rampage. And it cost this for the police, and it cost that for property, and it cost this for courts and so on. It would be very helpful, not to win over probably most of us,
right,
but to win over people eventually, to have a narrative and a chart, if possible.
Yeah, we can definitely I just did that one thing from DCYF, but we can definitely flesh it out and go through the costs of, prosecution of cases. And yeah, I'd be glad to do that.
Good.
Thank you. Thank you for the advice.
probably 12 years ago, this committee went to the federal prison in Berlin to talk to inmates concerning visitation with their children. One of the things that we brought up was the fact that their parent may have done something that was not good, but the child still needed interaction with that parent. These were very scary, hardened criminals.
Yep.
This state gave those parents the right to have video visitation with their children, because it was not safe and it was not healthy for the children to go to the prison and visit those parents. We're not talking about those kind of parents, are we?
So,
As a rule.
yeah, I would say we're certainly not proposing a program that would happen inside the prisons. The only reason I hesitate on that is that we have parents who've done some pretty scary stuff.
Yeah.
And if we can provide an opportunity for the children to see a different side, if we can provide the safety for that, and it can serve several functions. Because I'm thinking one case in particular, not even visitation per se. We have someone in New Hampshire State Prison who, in a really vicious, horrible, overkill kind of way, killed the children's mother. And those kids who were very young at the time, they're adults now. Every single year, multiple times a year, they wanted to go see dad. It's like, how could you want to go see someone who did this horrible, horrible thing? And the answer was, well, I can both love my dad and find what he did repulsive at exactly the same moment. And I already lost one parent, do I want to lose two, right? So it's so complicated. And so I'm thinking all along the spectrum of what people have done, if what we can do is guarantee, or as close as we can to guarantee, that there's safe contact there and maintain that bond despite what they've done, then I think that's a gold mine. But you're right. We're not talking about in prison programs right now where kids have to be, walk down the aisle. Yeah, that would be scary.
Thank you for your words. I think they're very important to the importance of this bill. Thank you.
Thank you.
Seeing no further questions, thank you, Dr. Hampton.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, and I'll be looking forward to things that can help us prove the point to the reluctant folks.
I will
Okay?
get that to you.
Good.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes former Representative Betty Gay, still from Salem.
Thank you for allowing me to add my approval and my hope that this bill will be passed and that all the issues that have to be addressed, like where to have them, how to pay for them, how to get the counselors, I just hope that everybody thinks that we will deal with that. That will happen. In no particular order, these were thoughts. Children need to know their parents love them. Just like he said, parents who've done awful things, the children do not like that at all. And you hope that they can shed the feeling that somehow they're responsible. They need to know their parents love them, so there needs to be a safe way for that to happen. And I'm so thrilled because when Dr. Hampton explained how they do it, it's by the book. I just wish I had the link because I read the federal requirements several years ago and unfortunately don't have a copy and don't know where they are. But he's describing every bit of safety and concern that's that's already been figured out and described. It sounds like the link, the real cost, the absolute essential cost is the counselor. And I'm keeping on hoping that in order to cut the costs so that we can have this everywhere, is that the counties would be contributing, even if it was to provide space at the county sheriff's and to guarantee to have law enforcement officers present at all times, not the same person perhaps, but to train their personnel so that they could offer the safety, provide the safety and the space, because obviously space costs a lot. But that could be in multiple places wherever you have trained law enforcement who are committed to assisting. The real trick is to have counselors who are trained. So I'm hoping that even though right now we don't have the money, we're going to figure that out, because this is an essential program, and tragically, most people don't have access to it. In my town, they did the visiting at the police station, and they had a room that they provided, but of course that wasn't as nice as what we hope it to be. And the essential part is having a counselor there who can make sure that the children are exposed to conversations that's supportive of them and stop any kind of rant against the other parent. So I'm just really excited. Thank you, Dr. Hampton, for coming and for doing this. And let's just figure out how to make this happen.
Thank you for your testimony. Chair recognizes Emily Lawrence from Waypoint. I ask this question each time. Is that attorney?
Yes.
Okay, I'm a third year 1L, so I have to, show deference here. No, I appreciate that.
Good morning, Chairman Pearson and members of the Children and Family Law Committee. My name is Emily Lawrence, and I'm the Advocacy Director with Waypoint. Waypoint is a private nonprofit organization that has been providing services for children and families for 175 years. This is our 175th anniversary. We provide comprehensive range of services, including therapeutic counseling, programs and services for families involved in child welfare, and advocacy on behalf of vulnerable populations. We are here today in support of House Bill 775, and I will say that I can make my testimony even briefer because Dr. Hampton had covered all of the points, and given his expertise, we will just agree with the points that he has shared and the reasons we believe that this bill should go forward. I do want to just share a couple of points from our staff. We have heard from Waypoint staff that families that are enrolled in our program are asking our home visitors and our staff if they can act as supervisors during these types of cases. And we frequently hear those requests. So this is a need that we're hearing from parents out in the community. We are not able to meet that need because we do not have, our staff are not fully trained. And these are, as you've heard, very complex cases. And so we would not want to put either our staff or families in a situation that was not safe. I think Dr. Hampton has explained the complexity of the cases and the importance for having a safe space that allows families to spend time together. We also see families frequently meeting at McDonald's or the library. And as you've already heard, those are not places for children to have relationships with their parents, particularly if that's the only time that they're able to see their parents. So I will just leave it at that. I would be happy to take any questions, but we urge the committee to pass House Bill 775. Thank you so much.
Any questions for Attorney Lawrence? Seeing none, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes Susan Brisson from DHHS.
Good morning.
Morning.
I'm Susan Brisson. I'm actually the Chief Staff Attorney for the Office of Child Support, but today I'm here representing DHHS with regards to this bill. You've seen the fiscal note that was put together, and I think the only thing I really have to emphasize is that we agree with the need, that it's necessary for the citizens of New Hampshire. It's just the fiscal part that's problematic, as we all know in these times. So if you have any other questions, I will endeavor to answer them.
Representative Rice.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for taking my question. So regarding the fiscal note, can you explain to me and the committee how the department came up with a $5 million fiscal note, yet Mr. Hampton can run his facility for $150,000?
Unfortunately, I was not involved in the putting together of the fiscal note. And I'm not sure that the people who did put it together had any conversations with Dr. Hampton, who's very impressive. So I could get back to you or have somebody get back to you with regards to how that was put together. But other than that, I really can't comment.
The fiscal note on the original bill said agencies contacted DHHS, but there's a lot of people over there. There's nothing more specific that I could find as to whom they actually talked with.
I have no idea. There's people who work for DHHS that I've never met. So
I know what I run my facility for, and I know what comparable sizes run for. So, yeah. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you so much.
Thank you.
That was the last pink card I have on this bill. So with that in mind, I will close the hearing on House Bill 775 and now go into executive session on the same. And at least aspirationally, this is a fantastic bill. Funny things have a way of happening along the way to having things funded and stood up. I'd like to pass this out of here with I would like to give Representative Gregg her chance to ask me the question of the chair. And you'll find out what that is. I don't know how the money part will work, but what this will say is this is good stuff. It is needed stuff. It is cost effective down the line. Unfortunately, we're not down the line. So we'll see what people can do with it once it comes out the door. Anyone else wish to make any comments before I move OTP? Representative DeSimone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for allowing me to speak. As I'm sitting here talking in realizing that this bill simply asks for 10 visitation centers for children to be able to spend time with a parent. In this state, it is required by this state for each county to have a nursing home. It is required for us to have a prison in each county. I don't think that asking for a visitation center in each county is a huge ask. I'm thinking about the Rockingham County facility in and of itself. I know that there are at least 5 entrances that I'm aware of that could keep the parents safe coming and going. There is a huge auditorium where children could visit with their parent, and there's a courtyard with a garden, and there's also an indoor facility with plants and gardens that's a very happy place for the nursing home residents to be. I don't see why it couldn't be adapted to have a visitation for children a couple of hours a week. So I'm seeing that the only cost would be that would come out of non-county funds that the county could raise to pay a facilitator to be in there or a counselor or whatever. I don't see why every single nursing home couldn't look into that. The building's already there. It's already heated. It's already manned. There are doors coming and going. Everything is there. I don't see why this $5 million cost can be really a true cost if that's where we're going to look. It's a happy place for children to be. So those are my comments and why I think that this bill is so important. We can work on it. We can get it done. The kids can have access to the parents which they desperately, desperately deserve. Thank you for allowing my rant.
Anyone else? Representative, are you scratching or waving? Okay, you may both scratch and share.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Sequentially or simultaneously, it's up to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just also wanted to add, and I know that Dr. Hampton touched briefly on it. I had been contacted by my librarian of our local library, and I had also received a positive email from another librarian in Manchester, I believe, and this type of visitation is a safety concern to them. They feel that undue responsibility is placed on their staff, and there are examples of the one parent or the other thinking that something did not go the way that they thought it should go in the visitation, and they're requiring libraries to give them videos and tapes from their cameras and just things that aren't you don't know if it would be even lawful to give that to the parent requesting it, and also that's really not their duty. And I just wanted to also let the library in the state know that that is a concern that we're addressing here as well.
Representative Love.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I love the concept of this. My only fear is if we pass it and it'll die on the floor or die in finance or die over in the Senate. And would we be better off trying to contact our county commissioners and see what we can put together with them to put a program together rather than take the chance of having this die past us?
Okay. Others? Anyone else? Representative Gregg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just to comment on your suggestion, I think legislatively, we have to show the level of importance on this. We're about policy, not about finance in here. So we need to show our support because we are a committee that looks at all aspects of what's going on in the courts with families, in our high conflict cases and stuff. And this is a level of importance. If for some tragic reason it cannot go through in other areas, then that's an area where maybe you as an advocate in your area can talk to that. But I think legislatively, we have to show the importance of something like this. Thank you.
Representative Georges.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm ready to support this bill, like Representative Love said and Greg. This is really, we need to, a center is a place where the parent can go meet with the children. There is a lot of problem with the children in our state, even in the city of Manchester. You can see a lot of kids being on trouble, be in jail for no reason, because sometimes there is a problem inside the family. But if there is a place where we can support the kids and the family for them to come better, I think so. This is a way, if I read all of those, I understand because I do that program. I told you true. I have this program with the youth and at Central high school, my center went to high school, open in Central, and then middle school. There is a lot of problem with the children. There is a lot of problem to meet with the family. But the center is a place where they can meet. They don't need to go meet the McDonald's or to the Dunkin' Donut or meet some places. But if there is a center that where we can, they can meet with the family, it's better to support how we can do it.
Thank you. Representative Corzine.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with both Representative Love and Representative Gregg. In my opinion, we should ought to pass on this today. And I think right after that, we should all talk to our county delegation. Because even if it stops in one place, we need to make sure we have a backup plan to get it done.
Seeing no further sharing, if I haven't done so already, the chair moves OTP. Do I have a second?
Second.
Wow.
Look at that. Whole bunch of us. We could probably take a vote right now, too.
All right, I'm going to give that to Representative Petrino because Representative Gregg, you've got something coming up in a minute. Well, okay, the motion is House Bill 775. Chair moves ought to pass. The ranking member moves second. Clerk Corzine, please call the roll.
The bill is HB 775. The motion is ought to pass. Chairman Pearson.
Yes.
Representative DeSimone.
Yes.
Representative Rice.
Yes.
Representative McMahon.
Yes.
Representative Nelson.
Yes.
Representative Seidel.
Yes.
Representative Love. Yes. Representative Corzine is yes. Representative Markel.
Yes.
Representative Petrino.
Yes.
Representative Nab.
Yes.
Representative Levesque.
Yes.
Representative Gregg.
Yes.
Representative Raymond. Representative Georges.
Yes.
And Representative Malone.
Yes.
Passes 16-0.
And the chair recognizes Representative Gregg for some wise advice of the chair.
Would you like this to go on consent, Mr.
Why,
Chairman?
I would. Any objection? I don't know. I'll let them worry about it. If they want to take it off, they can take it off. But I will be speaking to the clerk of the House because this was not advertised as a second committee bill. Today is the day, and all of a sudden we've got to raise $10 million, which I suggest is a lot of Girl Scout cookies. But we can do it. You've proven that. So we'll figure it out. I'll talk to the clerk as to where this goes next. And at least it is aspirational. And if we have to come back next year and build upon it, we'll have a lot more stuff at our disposal. I hope you've all taken good notes. This ends, all right, not yet. What?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Corzine made a statement that I think that we all should take in and listen to and go to our county delegations and discuss the possibility of using a county facility and county funds to defray the, if any, state costs so that we can get this through and get these centers up and running. Thank you.
I'm envisioning an op-ed here coming out, with several of us contributing to it, making the case for. Anybody interested in signing on with that, just talk to me about it. We can make it happen. All right, this ends the exec session on House Bill 775. We have one more item on our plate, and that is we have been holding House Bill 553 for the mother of all amendments, and do we have a status report on that, Representative Gregg? Just yet?
It's currently in review, and I will say in full transparency, it looks like this is my fault. When I transferred from Pages over to Word, it took out all of the cross-outs, so I found out at about 10:40 that they were having to figure out what I wanted crossed out, so it's now in review. So I would request maybe a recess to see if we can, which I apologize to everyone. I did not realize that happened until 10:40, but it's worth getting right.
It is very much worth getting right, and you and your subcommittee have done a lot of work on this. I would suggest we recess till 12:30. There is a lunch and learn, BYOF, bring your own food, in the cafeteria there's a 12 to 12:30 seating. If you wish to go to that, you may, and we come back at 12:30. Bon appetit. And I'm hoping that Jersey Noonan can come back for that. Thank you. String is over. We'll get moving about now. Okay, everybody, we are back. Most of us have finished most of the document. Before we do, there will be no meeting of this committee next week. There will be a meeting of the subcommittee on family court, and I announced who I've appointed to that, and so we will be meeting at 10 o'clock right here. The next meeting of this committee is to be determined. It depends on how many bills have crawled over from the Senate. I don't want to have a meeting just for 2 hours, so we'll wait until we get about a day's worth of Senate bills, and then we'll have another meeting. I'll send out a notice. The Special Committee on Family Court will meet on those Tuesdays when the full committee does not meet. I said 775 could go on consent until they pulled it off. Well, that didn't take long. I went over to the clerk and we talked about it, and I told him that because it wasn't an early bill, I know I didn't check update to see if the fiscal note actually showed up, and I think most of us were very surprised at what we saw today. I'm not sure I believe it, what they said, but at least there it is. I said, this is really important stuff. This is also a tight budget year. So the clerk got up, printed out the bill, walked over to the speaker, and the clerk and the minority leader will be looking at this bill to see what we could possibly do. I have a feeling they'll be talking to some money people, so stay tuned. I will let you know when I know, and I'm sure they'll be getting in touch with me. With that, open the exec session on House Bill 553. As you know, this does not take public testimony, but we do have Marie Noonan from DCYF that could be called up if need be. So this is the amendment. Somebody walk Representative Gregg home today because I think she is catatonic from the immense amount of work she's done with her subcommittee on this. Yes, there is a typo. If you turn to page 3, line 6, we do not want something which may cause harm. You know what? I agree with that. I do not want anybody to be caused harm. Not to worry, we don't have to go through this again. This is the kind of thing that if a bill passes, it goes into what's called enrolled bills, which is where they check all the citations to chaptered law and goofy little misspellings. So not to worry, but if you saw that and you wondered who would actually cause anybody harm, the answer is no one to my knowledge.
I don't even want to try to figure out the dangers of harm.
Well, it is the female form of hism.
Okay.
So it's hism and herm.
There you go. It's
And them are the plural, I think.
There you go.
All right. Discussion on 553. We do. Chair recognizes Representative Gregg.
I would like the motion for the amendment. Sure. I'd like to make a motion to adopt the amendment for 553.
All right, Greg and Di Simone pronounce all the letters. It's Italian. Do you know that? We nailed that down very early, that Representative Levesque, it's French, use some of the letters.
Correct.
Representative Di Simone, Italian, use all of the letters. This is important.
Correct.
Right.
I
Hey,
have a comment about your last name. Sorry, hello. I just have a comment about your last name. I'm from Pennsylvania, and that's a very common last name, and people in Pennsylvania call it Cunab.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So we have the amendment moved by Representative Gregg with 3 Gs and DeSimone with a bunch of letters seconded it. And if you guys would start talking about it, and then we can all jump in.
I'll comment. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll comment about my motion. So this amendment came from, originally we had the bill come in 553 that had some pretty big errors from what we originally submitted to OLS. So there were those fixes that we also honored in this, but we formed a subcommittee that unfortunately Representative Grossman was not able to really attend, but Representatives Rice, DeSimone, and Nelson were on with me. And so we really listened to the testimony, to the concerns. We took into consideration the concerns that brought before this committee, including, I think, some things that were misconstrued based on maybe that original bill or misconstrued based on what people thought this was about. So really tried to outline things, come up with definitions, because I think it's always important when we are opening this up, which really is one of the most important bills we have for children, if not the most important in this state. It's important to be good about defining things and really being as thorough as possible with this, because it not only says what it is, it says what it isn't. So I think that's really important. I also want to stress the fact that there is nothing in this that is anything about ramifications or anything else afterwards. This is strictly definitions. So this is only saying, as a state, as a legislature, this is what we know to be important for the protection of children in our state so that we don't have the tragic cases that we've seen on the news and stuff. That being said, I think everybody's read it, and I'm happy, rather than just talking about every single point, I'll answer any questions anyone has.
Representative Raymond.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you. My question is either for the members of the subcommittee or maybe even DCYF. So were this to be approved and DCYF gets called with an allegation, does DCYF still have the burden of proving that a child has suffered in some way as a result of the circumstances? So part of it I was noticing about like being without supervision or whatever. Is that every kid, or does DCYF still have the burden of showing that there was an impact on the child?
There's still a burden, and it has to show that impact on the child, because obviously, you know, some things are fine, but in excess, we take it to a different level. So that's, and DCYF did come testify too when we talked about definitions and stuff, explaining what those parameters are for them.
Okay, so this bill only, thank you, Mr. Chairman, follow up. This bill is only about setting definitions so that everyone can agree what the terms mean, but then a separate bill would have to come if we wanted to change anything about what the, like, preponderance of the evidence or how a judge makes a finding.
Yes, this is only about definitions.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Love.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for taking my questions or comments. The one problem I have with it is we continue to give DCYF the authority to investigate crime. When a child is punched or assaulted, it it belongs in a criminal court. It belongs being investigated by professional investigators. Somebody with the authority to arrest, because if I punch you, the cops will come and take me away. But if you're my 5-year-old daughter, DCYF comes and it gets all confused and sometimes kicked under the rug. And I would prefer some language to make the crime a crime again.
Representative DeSimone, you want to respond?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With all due respect, this bill has to do with definitions. DCYF goes into a particular home and assesses the situation, but the police department and the courts are the ones who decide whether a crime has been committed or not. It is not the intent of this bill to assert what is and is not a crime. We're only defining what child endangerment is. As far as the crime is concerned, that's up to the police and the courts. And that's how we're trying to leave that so that it keeps it cleaner. We don't want too many fingers, like you said, to mess things up and to delay a child safety. So these definitions are going to assist the police and the courts in saying, hey, wait a minute, it says right here, this is child endangerment. You can't do this. Now in another area of law, I think it's, help me out, what is it, 169?
So, I think so.
169, you committed the crime, and 169 is going to tell us how to sentence you and what to do about it. So we're leaving that out of this and just helping the court system and the police department define what is child endangerment. That's what this is about. And we wanted to keep it clean. I get where you're going. I absolutely agree that we need to clean things up and make things more streamlined. And I think this is a huge step in that area.
Follow up.
Thank you for the explanation, but as far as the emotional stuff goes, and it's great. The physical, the punching, the kicking of a child, it's still cloudy to me. It's
Representative, the absence of that language in this bill does not mean that has been taken away. What you're looking for is already there. It's just not in this bill. It's somewhere else in law.
comment.
Follow up.
Quite often, I see the police, whether it's a fish and game issue or a DC, the police will say, "Oh, it's a DCYF issue or it's a fish and game issue," and walk away from it. I think we need.
Then your beef should be with the police. Your beef should be writing a bill to tell the police what to do. This is not that bill.
Okay.
This bill could be 40 pages long if it had in it everything I'd like, but that's not what this bill's about. But sure.
Yeah. Okay, I'd just like to see some language that would clearly define telling the police that when somebody's assaulted, whether they're 4 years old or 400 years old, it's a crime.
And that's in 116 already.
No,
I
it's
just got done reading.
600s. Oh,
I'm sorry,
I'm
what?
sorry. I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
Representative DeSimone. The criminal statutes are the 600s.
That's what I thought.
Yeah,
I-
and
Okay,
so
good.
it's like 639-ish.
Something like that, yes. It's already there.
But one of the issues that New Hampshire has, and I think maybe Representative Love, I mean, I'd be happy to work with you on a bill for next year for it, is that our criminal statutes, the criminal code 600s, has a carve out for physical discipline. So physical discipline is allowed in New Hampshire, and that's a separate issue, right? So if a parent hits a child hard enough to injure them because they're doing it in a disciplinary way, there's some gray area under the criminal statute on whether or not that is illegal and a crime. However, it could be something that DCYF goes in and says, hey, we want to open a preventive case with you and get you some parenting skills training. And that's what these definitions allow. So it allows for that secondary level of maybe the parent is misguided and needs some parenting assistance, as opposed to this person's a criminal and they need to go to jail. And so that's what I was trying to get at with my first question, was how do we keep them separate?
If you want to, I'll work with you on a bill to do that. Does that sound good? Okay.
Anyone else to share? Representative Seidel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm looking at page 10, lines 9 through 12, where it is regarding RSA 632A, semicolon 10-D, section 4, where it says any child subjected, blah, blah, blah. But and I don't know if you're aware that that is specific to female genital mutilation. There's nothing about the male genital mutilation in that part of the bill, because it refers back to paragraph 1, which again is all about female genital mutilation. So I wonder if you could address that.
So that was actually something put in by OLS. So sometimes when you update, that's not part of our actual bill, but when you update definitions, it changes something in other statutes. So because we say instead of an abused child, to have suffered abuse, so that could certainly be something that's looked at in 632. That would be a different bill, but that's what our bill then changed in there. So it didn't change whether it's female or male. It simply changed that one little part. And we're not opening up that statute with this statute. So that's why it's noted on there, and that's why it's not addressed any differently. But I appreciate that. Thank you. I also wanted to say thank you all for your patience. I forgot.
The motion before us is OTP, ought to pass.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry. I have one more question.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm so sorry.
Representative Raymond.
Thank you. So I just wanted to double check. So at the initial hearing on this bill, there were some questions about postnatal substance abuse stuff. And I think it was fixed in here as I'm reading it. It seems fixed to me, but I did not watch your meetings and I apologize. I just want to, I don't know, verify before I vote.
Sure, I can answer that. So you probably all remember, I think she was a nurse, but Farah Sheen, it's not Shaheen, it's Sheen. She came in and had some serious concerns, as well as Representative Beauchemin. And so I think a lot of their concerns, we really paid attention to those. And a lot of the concerns were based on the original bill, not the actual amendment. But I did go over with her on Friday at great length on the phone and really talked about this. And actually some of our advocates, the people that work on the ground with this, because we did hear in here that people are scared right now when they're using substances, they get pregnant. That's actually kind of a time where some people want to say, okay, I'm going to get clean, but they're scared to go to the doctor because they're scared to get seen because they're scared they're going to lose their baby. The point of this and bringing this in, it is in another area on reporting, but it wasn't in our definitions because we hadn't opened this up. So the point of this is to say that to actually encourage mothers who are with child to seek treatment. There is not a time limit on it. They have to be there the whole time. But the encouragement is to have some medical professional with eyes on that baby so that they can also be aware of the situation. Because even though substance exposure in itself is not abuse, it does up the risk factor. The other part of this particular section is that it's not just substance exposure, it's substance exposure plus. So they're also, in order for there to be a screen-in situation, there would also have to be a form of neglect or something, maybe marks on the baby, bruises, or the baby failure to thrive. There would have to be something else. But otherwise, if we know that this mother who is suffering from substance abuse disorder is under the care of a medical professional, they have eyes on that baby, then we understand that's a difficult process they're going through, but it's not necessary for a screen-in with DCYF. And we did confirm with DCYF that that would be the case.
Thank you for your indulgence.
Representative Seidel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a clarification on substance. Is there not going to be a definition of what substance actually entails? Is it only drugs? Is it only illegal drugs? Is it aspirin?
Well, unfortunately, the misuse of it could be legal or illegal. So, I mean, that's which is substances, because even though there are some forms of substances that are legal, oxycodone and stuff, certainly in excess, then it becomes, so it's misuse.
You're talking things that would be prescribed.
Normally prescribed, yes, but can also be misused. So, yes.
Thank you.
Last chance. Representative Markell.
And thank you for taking up, okay, I'm sorry, just for discussion purposes. So in terms of emotional abuse, who's going to be going to court and proving this by a preponderance of the evidence, particularly when you're talking about things like parentification, and particularly where we're engaging in what I think some people might consider burden shifting, which when we have a rebuttable presumption in the law, which is something that's rarely used, what it means is that you're going to be presumed guilty, and the burden is going to be shifting to you to prove that you're not guilty. So when we're greatly expanding the definition of abuse here, which we clearly are, how do you feel that should be addressed?
What page and line are you?
Okay, couple of things. Well, first of all, when we look for, okay, I'll get it here. Okay. Rebuttable presumption. Okay, I'm looking at page 9, line 12. There shall be, and I'm aware that this is probably in RSA 169, but it does trouble me. There shall be a rebuttable presumption that a child's, and then you have emotional, physical, psychological, or mental well-being, has suffered or is likely to suffer serious impairment by exposure to any of the following conduct. Okay, so when we're dealing with a rebuttable presumption, this basically tells a parent coming to court that you are at a legal disadvantage when you go to court. Okay, and when when we are greatly expanding the definitions and causes of action for abuse, should we be using that standard? Okay.
I can respond to that. That particular section about the rebuttable presumption of harm has been in state statute for 7 years now. So it's not new.
Well, I know that it's not new, but what we're doing is we're expanding the definitions of abuse to include less tangible forms of what is going to be deemed abuse. So in other words, if you go into a court and you have a rebuttable presumption and you're talking about a child being subject to abuse in a physical sense, in a physical maltreatment way or something along those lines, that might be a little bit easier to understand. But when we start going into definitions of parentification, when we start going into things like belittling, when we start going into the, for want of a better term, telling a child, or the allegation is basically telling a child that they're being belittled, they're being all these other things. Now we create this rebuttable presumption. And this is going to put, I think, and now where I think the lines get blurred, and I think it's problematic, is that we are talking about an infringement on parental rights. Now, let me explain. I realize that parental rights are not absolute. Okay, so you have no right to maltreat your child or do any of the other horrible things that some people do to their children. But I'm concerned two things. Number one, we are on a slippery slope. Number two, I'm concerned about two things. One, a procedural due process issue, which could very well go to the New Hampshire Supreme Court because we are implicating parental rights on what might be considered a constitutionally overbroad set of circumstances. Now, I understand Representative Gregg is looking at me and saying, no way, okay, or she disagrees, okay, but these, I think, are issues that I think that we need to resolve. I think they're legitimate. So those are my concerns those are some of my concerns at this point.
Representative Rice.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So can you please refresh my memory how many other states have these definitions?
Oh gosh, I don't remember, but there's many. But I also want to point out before we go into the definitions, it says it's a persistent pattern of threatening, demeaning, and humiliating. This is not one time of like saying it's a persistent pattern that then ends up with, gosh, I can't read now, that ends up with severe injury to the child, whether it be psychologically. So this is not just, oh, they belittled them and this is one little thing. It already says that it's a persistent pattern. So this does not infringe in parental rights. And once again, this is the definitions. And many states have emotional abuse in their definitions at this point.
Well, okay, what I'm saying is it's not a question of persistent pattern. It's the question of rebuttable presumptions. You're going in and you're presumed guilty until you're shown innocent. So I'm not saying, you said hypothetically to your child, I'm not concerned about why didn't you clean up your room, Tommy, you're worthless, or something like that. That's not my concern. And even a persistent pattern still doesn't get by. To me, this doesn't pass constitutional muster. And the fact that other states may have the definition, do they also have the expansion of the definitions, okay, is problematical in the respect that there may be, I think, an overbreadth issue here, okay, number one. Number two, I'm suggesting that when it triggers parental rights, and other states may have these definitions, okay, I'm troubled by, do they also have the rebuttable presumption in there? Now, I know that's number three, okay, and I'm concerned about the overbreadth of it. The other thing is in that I understand parentification beyond a degree that might be expected, dependent on a variety of factors. And in point of fact, I had a case like that, so I can understand it. But these are the things that trouble me. And also some of our constituents, some of my constituents anyway, have expressed concern about the rebuttable standard, okay? And those are some of the concerns that I have.
So if I may, Representative, I just looked up section 169C 12F, which is the rebuttable presumption of harm section. And it specifically states there shall be a rebuttable presumption that a child's health has suffered or is likely to suffer serious impairment by exposure to any of the following conduct. And I think that's where we were headed by using that terminology in this bill, because these are definitions.
Right. But what I'm saying is it's the rebuttable presumption. I don't like the idea, and I have difficulty with the idea of relieving the moving party of a substantial portion of their burden. Because when you go to court, there are really two burdens. There's the burden of production and the burden of persuasion. And what's happened here is that this is now burden shifting. And it's burden shifting on something which is far more nebulous than when you expand your definitions of abuse, okay, and make them far more subjective. So in other words, a fact finder can go to court, and if we see a child in the more obvious sense of the terms of abuse, with broken bones, with scars, with something else like that, that's a little more obvious and a little easier to understand. So I'm concerned about due process in this area. And I'll further state that if you look at the level of due process, a good case for this to look at is Matthews v. Eldridge. And the reason I say that, it is probably the lead case from the U.S. Supreme Court. In essence, when we're talking about procedural due process, we are looking at the rights that are presently at stake. We're looking at the administrative burden, okay, that's going to be placed on either the state or one particular party with those rights. The cost and I'm doing this off the top of my head, so please forgive me. It's going to be the administrative cost of what the burden is, okay? So if you look at a number of these factors, I'm just not happy with that particular aspect of it. Now, the rights that come into play, okay, are once again parenting rights, okay? So they should not be taken lightly. I'll repeat. I agree, no parent should be allowed to abuse their child, okay? But we're moving into areas, for example, that also don't have a differentiated diagnosis involved here, okay? And this, I think, is very important when you're going into parentification. Who's to say that a child's emotional state is either situational or, for example, not the result of something else which could be either a character problematic?
So if you look at the rebuttable presumption of harm statute, which was updated in 2024.
Correct.
That's where it gets involved with the evidentiary process of a parent or guardian having evidence of a parent or guardian's substance misuse, exposure to violence directed. The rebuttable presumption of harm established in this paragraph 3 shall not apply to victims of domestic violence who are subject to an abuse, and all of that. What this statute is trying to do is just define. It's not, that's all it's trying to do. The rebuttable presumption of harm is already in statute.
Yes, but what I'm saying is, and I respectfully repeat, what was already in the statute didn't contemplate the existence, okay, or the expansion of what constitutes a harm to a child. What we're doing is we are expanding, okay? We are expanding what constitutes abuse, but we're using a standard which was probably a little less intrusive on parental rights. So now, and look, I'm not saying that somebody should belittle their child. I'm not supporting any of those activities. I'm raising what I think are important constitutional concerns. And I would hate to think that either through manipulation or ineptitude, okay, because most of the people who end up in court, it's certainly in district court, are self-represented. And there is also no provision in this particular statute that allows for appointed counsel. And, you can get appointed counsel in a number of circumstances. For example, I get that, but we have an amended bill that expands different things, and I'm trying to bring this to the attention of the committee. So what I'm saying here is that, so for example, the history of that is pretty, I don't want to go too far off point, but the history of that is pretty simple. Gideon v. Wainwright, 1966, people who face a deprivation of liberty and can't afford an attorney, you get one appointed for you if you can't afford counsel. Then when you look at a termination of parental rights in the state of New Hampshire, counsel is available to you. But here, what you have is probably a substantial possibility of a deprivation, but we don't have any due process safeguards for the parents. And this troubles me about this bill. Like I said, and I will repeat, children should not be abused mentally, okay, or emotionally, or physically, or at all. But what I am saying here is that I think I have some real due process concerns. And this is, I'm sorry, go ahead, Jody.
Thank you. Representative Nelson.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Why do we do that? I'm really sorry.
I don't know.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'm trying to drill down a little bit because I'm not obviously a lawyer. So what I think you're telling us is that prior to the addition of emotional and psychological abuse, prior to the addition of that in this definition, it was only physical abuse, and you can prove physical abuse by medical records, x-rays, objective findings. But I had done research on this before, and it's my understanding that proof of emotional and or psychological abuse can be given from testimonies of teachers and counselors, and if there is a psychological evaluation. So, and again, I'm no lawyer, but that's what I thought would be evidence that would not be a parent pointing fingers at another parent.
I'm not even thinking for 1 minute that this is one parent pointing fingers at another parent. Okay, that didn't even enter my thought process. What entered my thought process is DCYF coming in with a load of resources with people who are not necessarily trained, okay, in these specifics, basically making psychological diagnoses, okay, based on what? Okay, so for example, if I have a BA in sociology and I'm working for the Department of Youth and Services, all right, and I'm going to come in and I'm going to say this child has been abused, it's been parentified, this, that, and the other thing, okay, and there's going to be a judge there, and there's going to be a parent there who is probably not going to have counsel, number one. Number two, is going to be facing the presumption that they are wrong as a matter of law.
Representative Gregg, yeah.
So parents get an attorney in 169C cases. One will be appointed if they can't afford it. So they would have an attorney.
Okay.
So this
but
is not them going in on their own. So that's a moot point.
Okay. Well, I'm looking at it from the point of view as in termination cases. Okay.
That's
Okay, because I'm not aware that they're entitled to appoint, in abuse and neglect cases, but if these things are being heard in the family division, where a lot of them are heard, or excuse me, district court, okay, but what I'm saying is I'm not seeing that here, okay, and once again, I'm dealing with the presumption.
Louder and into the mic, please.
Sorry, I said these are just the definitions. You're not going to see those type of things here. This is not an all-inclusive. We did get your suggestions that you gave to the subcommittee, but that was on like what happens after this. That was all like penalty phase. That's not what this is, and that should never be incorporated in the definitions. This is your baseline bill. This is your foundation. After this is what's built all these other things, but we already have that parents get attorneys in that. So this is something in the evidentiary standard for actually having parental rights terminated is very, very high. It's not the typical. This is literally about, can we keep families together? Can we have an intervention? Because we know that this is not best practice. Emotional abuse can be. I saw a child one time that was abused over their homework. Made to do hours and hours of math that they didn't even know yet because they got a B on a test. And when a social worker started asking them about how school was, they curled in a fetal ball and started crying and unable to talk about that. Emotional abuse is not something that is just generic or made up or that you can't see. Anyway. That's it.
No, Representative Gregg, I never disagreed that there aren't children who are emotionally abused. I didn't disagree that it happens. My concern is basically what amounts to burden shifting in those cases, okay? And that puts a prospective defendant at a procedural disadvantage.
Representative Raymond.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I think we're having a fundamental misunderstanding about where in the process of, first of all, on what DCYF does and where in the process this bill takes place. So this bill creates definitions so that DCYF knows when someone calls with a concern whether to send a social worker out to assess the situation, right? And then whether or not the social worker needs to do something else with that information once they get it. DCYF is not, it's not criminal. People get attorneys when they get to court. But the purpose of DCYF is to help parents rectify parenting errors that have harmed their children. So in this case, when we're talking about a rebuttable presumption of harm, you can see based on the crossouts here on page 9, that a lot of the stuff you're talking about that is somewhat nebulous about like psychological harm and psychological mistreatment, it is just reworded, but it is not creating something new out of whole cloth. When we're talking about a rebuttable presumption of harm, we're talking about circumstances where the parents are operating a meth lab out of the house and there are toddlers running around. Now, DCYF might not have evidence that the toddler ate the methamphetamine, but they sure as heck have evidence that the developmental stage of the toddler was such that the toddler was at imminent risk of serious harm should they eat something that was contaminated with methamphetamine. And the parent would need to then demonstrate that they had their methamphetamine in a way that it wasn't around the toddler, right? We're talking about a rebuttable presumption of harm. We're talking about a parent who is out driving drunk with their kids in the back seat. Now, maybe they didn't crash into a wall and the kid didn't get harmed, but the child was subject to imminent risk of serious harm or death because the parent was operating a motor vehicle while impaired, right?
Okay.
And the only reason that they didn't have an accident is because they got arrested for it. But DCYF's role is not to punish the parent in those cases. DCYF's role is to utilize the court system if the parent won't agree to services to put in those interventions so that the parent can do better next time, to help pay for things like treatment to the parent so that they learn about what their child needs and they can eventually get their child back. Right? That's the whole point. It's not to take kids away. It's not to create criminal standards.
I respectfully point out that wasn't the thrust of my position.
No,
The
your
thrust of
position
my
was
position
about
was the rights of the parents.
the
I'm
parent, but the parent doesn't have a right to put their child at imminent risk of serious harm or impairment. And this gives a list of the actions by the parent that would cause those circumstances.
But once again, I respectfully point out, I'm not disagreeing with the fact that abuse and harm takes place. What I'm talking about is a procedural due process right. Now, I'm looking at RSA 169C10, attorneys and guardians ad litem. And what I'm seeing here, as I look here, is something different. I'm looking at, in cases pursuant to this chapter in a neglected or an abused child, the court shall appoint a CASA advocate or other approved program. And it goes on, but it doesn't say too much about in cases involving this chapter, the court may appoint an attorney to represent the express interests of the child if the child's request is appointment of counsel.
Right, because we have a bill for that.
Yeah, and that's going to be effective August 1st, 2026. And then I'm looking also here where, and perhaps I'm just overlooking it,
Well,
but
I think
don't see where a parent is going to get appointed counsel.
that is a different part of RSA 169. RSA 169 has multiple parts, and this bill only touches some of them, but not all of them.
We have discussed this one at some length, and now it's getting very repetitive. Representative DeSimone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With all due respect to my fellow representative, the RSA that we're discussing here on page 9, starting at line 11, that you are right, understandably concerned about, is 169C12. Currently in the RSA, it says there shall be a rebuttable presumption that a child's health has suffered or is likely to suffer serious impairment by exposure to any of the following conduct. That's what it currently says. This bill only defines or changes that word health, the one word health, takes that word out and puts in emotional, physical, psychological, or mental well-being. It just changes the word into a few more words to more succinctly define instead of just saying health. Because if you just say, as I'm sure you're aware, a rebuttable presumption that a child's health, it could mean you're making the child stay out in the cold so they caught a cold or something to that effect. But this is specifically getting a little more specific, stating emotional, physical, psychological, or mental. We're not changing 169C12F. We're just defining what health actually means. That's where we're trying to go with this.
No, like I said, I have no objection to that, okay? In other words, I understand the expanded definitions. And but my concern, once again, is if somebody can show me where the defendant gets appointed counsel on these cases, okay, I will withdraw my objection. But I haven't seen it.
Representative Gregg, while Representative Raymond is trying to find it.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to point out, too, when I said that we took every consideration, especially parental rights. So I am a mama bear. I have been in the throes with my children, and I understand what it took to protect them. And I also understand what I had to serve up to make sure that everything was right for my kids. And so there is nothing more important than parental rights. It's when it comes to stuff like this, but I also want to say keeping the children safe is up there as well. And there's a lot of parents that do not have insight into their own behavior that can be incredibly complicating. This does not take away parental rights. As a matter of fact, as a legislature, we've already decided that in the home is the best place. This defining it in this way allows for intervention so that parents, we don't have to get it to a point where they have to be taken away from the parents. We can have an intervention in the meantime. I'm sure I have heard you over and over. You don't have to repeat it. Once again, I know that you feel how you feel, and I'm sure Representative Raymond is looking to find that. But I just want to say that we have honored that. There has been a lot of misplaced mistrust on this about wanting to take away parental rights. That isn't it at all. As a matter of fact, there's a parental rights bill going on the floor that had a motion to pass. We understand, and we said in here that we do agree with parental rights. So that's not the case. And we did look this over saying, is this going to infringe on parental rights that are necessary, or is it just about keeping these kids safe while also honoring that? And that's the line that we fell on. As a matter of fact, it was my colleagues from across the aisle on the same side of this that helped with these definitions. So.
Without objection, the chair would like to call the question. Would you like to speak? Oh, thank you. All right, the motion before us is on Amendment 2025-1079H on House Bill 553FN, moved by Representative Gregg, seconded by Representative DeSimone. This is on accepting the amendment. Would the clerk please call the roll?
This is on HB 553.
This is on the amendment 1079 to House Bill 553.
Sorry. What he said, Chairman Pearson,
Yes?
Representative DeSimone,
Yes.
Representative Rice,
Yes.
Representative McMahon,
Yes.
Representative Nelson,
Yes.
Representative Seidel,
Yes.
Representative Love, Representative Corzine, no. Representative Markell,
No.
Representative Petrino,
Yes.
Representative Nab,
Yes.
Representative Levesque. Oh, sorry. Representative Gregg,
Yes.
Representative Raymond, Representative Georges,
Yes.
Representative Malone.
Yes.
Thirteen to 2.
13-2.
Now the motion is in order for the bill as amended. We have voted the amendment. Now we need to vote the bill as amended. And the chair recognizes Representative Gregg for a motion. Who's going to do it? Who wants to do it?
I move OTPA. And by the way, can we say what section that's in for the representation?
Say what?
Go ahead. Second.
All right, Kim Rice seconds. Sure. All right. The motion now before us is moved by Representative Gregg, seconded by Representative Rice. HB 553FN as amended. That is the motion. Any final discussion on anything that hasn't been said 5 times? Representative Seidel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question has to do with 2 different pages. On page 3, line 27, well, it's lines 25 through 27, definition of abuse says the physical injury to a child or indeterminate means of, if the parent, guardian, custodian does not have a reasonable alternative explanation, is considered abuse. And then on page 8, line 17, it gives reason for trauma and the trauma lens, any single incident or occurrence of serious injury or illness. So my concern is it reads to me to leave out due process to the parent. So if you could explain, if you could speak to that, please.
I'd be happy to. So this is based on cases that we've had, like our broken babies and stuff. So the problem is when you have a child that's non-ambulatory and comes in with a broken femur currently. We've had babies go back because we don't have this under a single case. We don't want to see that baby come back with, sometimes they don't come back with, they come back unfortunately dead and not with multiple broken bones. So that's what that kind of case is, something that, or it could be, forcing the child to eat kitty litter one time or something like that. We have to understand that that's all of a sudden a high risk. We don't need to see it multiple times to understand that something is wrong that needs to be looked at further.
When the clerk is ready, please call the roll.
This is HB 553, ought to pass with amendment. Chairman Pearson.
Yes.
Representative DeSimone.
Yes.
Representative Rice.
Yes.
Representative McMahon.
Yes.
Representative Nelson.
Yes.
Representative Seidel.
No.
Representative Love. Representative Corzine. No. Representative Markel.
No.
Representative Petrino.
Yes.
Representative Nab.
Yes.
Representative Levesque. Representative Gregg.
Yes.
Representative Raymond. Representative Georges.
Yes.
Representative Malone.
Yes.
I got 11 to 4.
It is 11-4, and since we are at the end of the committee considering House bills, if someone wishes to write a minority report, you are to declare that now, and the report has to be in before you leave. So amongst the four of you, is there anybody who wishes to write the minority report?
This one?
Oh, okay.
Is he willing to write it?
I'm going to repeat that, and this time I want everybody to listen. Because this is the end of this part of our first year of our term. If you wish, the four people who voted no, if you wish to write a minority report, you are to declare that now and have it in before you leave.
I'll make the report.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
One is for Representative Gregg and one is for Representative Markel.
One for Greg, one for Marco. And this ends the executive session on 5:53. We're done.